All right, we're here with Roman today. We're going to be talking about some real things. I mean, there's a lot of struggle, and last time we talked about kind of like being stuck in the darkness, being stuck inside the struggle. And I feel like a lot of us are there, but I really feel like lately God's been speaking to me about Roman. And I just feel like Roman's going to be able to use those things that he's experienced and God's allowed him to go through to actually help others. I think he's going to help a lot of people, A, because of his heart, but his experience and everything else too. Too often we feel like the things we go through, it just doesn't stop. It seems chaotic. For me, it did. I know I mentioned chaotic last time, and you said it wasn't necessarily chaotic for you, but I think you said maybe more just stuck or the same things happening over and over. And I get that too. And I say chaotic because that's what I felt like my life was. It's just like no peace, always just another storm, something new always coming. And I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden, one day, after my divorce, after I'm by myself, after I'm stuck in my own mind for so long and by myself and just feel like giving up, it all just made sense. One day, boom, it just all was like overnight, snap of the fingers, everything changed. And I don't really know what it was. It just seemed like everything that I had been through, now it made sense. Now there was a purpose to it. Now there was a reason to it. And I know you struggle a lot, Roman, just because your circumstances, your situations, and it sucks, man. You feel like giving up a lot. So I just want to talk about that right now because I feel like you're not alone, but when we're going through it, we feel alone. You're not necessarily stuck because I do see some movement. You just even showing up here is movement, right? But we still feel stuck. We're not necessarily completely broken, but we just feel like everything's just falling apart. So I want to talk about that with you because I think, can we understand this? How can we try to make a purpose tied to what you're going through? And it's easier talked about and said than it is done. But I think if we start talking about it, sometimes it brings light onto it. And if we talk about it, that's where solutions start happening.
Because, oh yeah, to further expand on that point, just the talking about it, because I've been part of, a lot of groups and all that, and all I see in a lot of like the faith world is just a lot of talk, just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and they talk about their problems, they talk about what's going on, they talk about feelings, beliefs, disagreements, all that, but nothing ever. I always just sit there silent, just listening to it all and going, okay, what are y'all going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? What can I do about it? What can you do about it? What can we all do together about it? And it just leads to more talk, which is just the same thing as being idle. It's just stagnation, just talking with no action. And
Like
that's
faith with no works.
exactly like there's none. And that's bothered me a lot because I know like some people are limited in what they can do. And you've told me this a lot, like trying to figure out what in my life can I do, which I've tried to figure out constantly. And there is a lot of there's a lot I can't do right now, which sucks. But there is, I am trying to find every little, even if it's something minor, I do try and go do it. Even if I don't want to, or if my energies are just low, my energy levels are just low and just don't want to bring myself to it, and I just want to distract. But at least for me, like I just sit there silent a lot of the times. Like I don't like to talk about, especially in groups, I don't like to talk about my problems. Not as much as say like a lot of, I'm sure we all know those people who when you sit down in a group and they just talk and talk and talk.
That would be me.
You're nowhere near as bad as some I've seen. I'd say you're not even in like the upper half. Some people just go on and they just repeat themselves over. But there's repeating yourselves because you have a message to say, and there's being consistent in that is biblical. Like pattern and repetition with message is biblical, as Jesus did. He was constantly repeating his message to people so that all could hear. But then there's people who just say the same things, but they're not trying to get a message across. They're just trying to talk. And some of them just love to hear themselves talk.
There's not much purpose to it besides
No, it's
just
just
talking.
all eyes on me. All
Yeah.
eyes on me. Look how badly I'm suffering, and then I hear the problems, and I go, I would love to trade. You want to trade problems? I would love to do that. And they always go, I don't know about that. And I'm like, yeah. So maybe it's not a lot of, because I'm learning to try and be grateful, and in many ways I am, and in many ways I try to be myself mentally and spiritually grateful, but my flesh doesn't like to be grateful.
Hmm.
And that's just the dichotomy of what we are. But try to be grateful for all the bad that's happened. Try to be grateful for all the misery and suffering. And there is this is going to sound kind of weird. There is knowledge to be learned from spending time with the enemy, but not in like you learn what he has to offer, because you don't want to. What he has to offer is nothing good, but you learn by your time with him and trying to combat him and listen to his lies and understand what he's trying to trick you into. There is knowledge there, but not in the. You have to be conscious of it, very conscious and aware of what's going on, and just all the pain that being with the enemy and his forces brings. Because like, well, you have to always understand that the enemy's just going to come after. He's going to come after anyone who's close, trying to stick on the narrow path. He's going to do it no matter what. Job proves this, but I actually learned a interesting thing about Job, about how not only did Satan want to go after him because he was doing the right thing, but at the same time, Job was still in the wrong because he was living out the moralist lifestyle, which is instead of, basically he's just using God as a slot machine, just a magic genie in the sky where he's like, well, if I follow the laws, I will get everything I desire and more. And that's not how it worked. He had no real relationship with God. He would just go to God and be like, give me more. I'm doing what you say, so give me more.
Yeah, he figured out the strategy or the pattern, and it's like, all right, well, this works, and just keep doing it. But then sometimes I think we get so lost in that we forget it's not about any of that. It's about a relationship. It's about spending time with God, and that's what he wanted. He didn't care about the laws. He created the laws so we could have relationship with him, I feel.
Well, I feel like he created the laws for that, but he also created the laws to keep us well.
Yeah.
Because obviously he wants us
absolutely.
to do those things because he is pleased by them. But ultimately, like, when we are able to keep him, he's pleased, but he knows we're never going to be able to keep him fully. And anyone who thinks they are keeping him fully is a liar, because everyone falls short of the glory of God. But ultimately, yes, like, if you can do both, keep the laws and have a relationship, I mean, that's what Jesus did. Perfect harmony. Never sin, but, we're not Jesus. He's the perfect one, not us. But
I think that's what we have to realize. We try to be like Jesus and reach this level of perfectionism, but the truth of the matter is we have to realize that we're in the flesh.
Exactly.
And that we will never be perfect. We're not the Son of God. We're in the image of God, but we aren't the Son of God. We aren't God come down in the flesh, which our goal is to try to be like Jesus. But if you really look at what Jesus did, he loved people. That he defined love, even if you asked him what the greatest commandment was, right? Which commandment is pretty much same as one of the laws, right? So what is the commandment? And he said to love God, to love your neighbors. But it really came down to love and how he loved people, meet them where they're at. You didn't have to be a perfect person. You didn't have to meet this status quo of what society says that we have to be. He actually just loved. And I think that's one of the best things about it. And, that's why I also feel like he gave you your heart that he gave you. And he also put you in the circumstances that he put you in, because you understand, I think, more than a lot of people of what a Christian should be like. I think you understand more than a lot of people what the word actually says. And you actually spend more time with God, even though it's usually in the dark places, right? So yeah, you may spend a lot of time with Satan attacking you and in these bad situations, but a lot of that is actually drawing your relationship closer to God, even though we still don't understand it, even though we don't fully understand the concepts or the reasonings behind the situations that we go through. It still draws us and pushes us closer, because we see what the enemy's doing. We see what he came to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what he's trying to do. And that's what he's doing in a lot of situations. But I think that with how you speak and how I listen to you, I think that draws you a lot closer to God, even though it's through the dark. But it's drawing you to the light because you don't want to go be the dark. It's not like you want to be on the dark side. You want the light, but a lot of times we just don't know from where our situation is to our circumstances are, how to fully get into that because there's so many barriers, so many blocks. Sometimes you feel stuck.
Hmm.
And I think you relate yourself to Job a lot, which, like you were just saying, he was a good man. He was that. But a lot of times, like, if you're going in the right direction towards where God wants you to be, that's where you're going to hit more resistance. And I think that's why,
Hmm.
honestly, you hit so much resistance. I think that's why you've hit it for such a long time. But some people look at maybe you, Roman, and say, oh, you're weak because you struggle. The truth of the matter is, you've been in that struggle long enough. You're not weak. You're
Yeah.
strong. You're stronger than most people could even understand because you're still standing and you've been in the dark.
Hmm.
Most people, if they got in the dark even for a minute or two,
Yeah, they can't handle it.
they can't
And
handle it.
I've seen that personally where I've called people out, people who are able to recite scripture better, far better than I ever could, because I'm still learning my scripture. But people who can just recite any verse right off the cuff, but I see them and I go, but you don't act Christ-like in any way. You claim to know all this stuff, but yet you don't practice it. And they have the audacity to talk about suffering and pain and the insanity that they have no clue of the insanity of what that brings and how to deal with it. And I'm like, I've seen y'all do nothing. But the moment, the enemy starts knocking at your door or he starts trying to claw his way on from under your floorboards to get into your house, y'all just run. You'll just run away. You run away you just put it out of your mind. You go try to escape it by doing, granted, things that may not be bad, but a lot of times you do that is bad. And I've seen that in ways of judging others, hedonism, just outright denial. Just a lot of like, nope, Satan's not after me. I'm a child's God. Satan can't come after me. Scripture says otherwise. Satan himself came for Jesus himself in the desert for, what was it, 40 days, 40 nights?
Yeah.
And I mean, he personally was just on him for all of that time. And I'm like, no one can deal with that. No, most people, most quote unquote believers now can't, or I won't say can't, they refuse, they're unwilling to deal with that. But Jesus sat there, he stuck with them for 40 days and 40 nights, and every time just rebuked. He never banished him, though. He had the right to banish him and say, get away from me, go, be gone. But no, he allowed him to stay so he could just deny him and deny him and deny him
Yeah.
and struggle with him. And because we know, I mean, it makes it clear like Jesus was tempted. He just didn't give in to the temptation. That's why he chose to sit there with him for such a long time, which is just wild. I mean, can you imagine being like actually face to face with Satan himself for 40 days and 40 nights? That'd be maddening. It'd be insane.
Not eating.
Yeah, fasting the whole time too, like literally depriving yourself of all worldly wants while the master of the world is literally offering you everything. Like most people wouldn't dare go through that. And so some of us are put in that situation not by choice. And when he does come, we just run. And that angers me because they always say, oh, I'm wearing the full armor of God. I wield the sword of salvation or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so why don't you use it? Use what that armor is meant for. Use what that sword's meant for in combat. But they don't. They immediately throw it off and run away. Just cowardly. And that's something I struggle with too. To go back to your point of the greatest commandment is like my greatest struggle is easily trying to love. But in my experience, loving has never really brought me anything good. Because again, it's my whole. I deal with a whole twisted concept of love. Because from what I understand, love, when you try to love, especially like just open yourself up, like it's just gonna bring you more pain and betrayal. But in trying to, not hate, because that's my biggest struggle is hating others, hating what they do, hating the choices they make. and how you see them make the same choices over and over and over, despite them knowing what the right choice is. They just refuse to do it, whether it be because their ego won't allow them to do it, or because they're afraid to do it, or just simply because, sadly, a lot I've seen is just they're not capable of doing it. They see the right thing, and for some reason, their mind just goes, they're just on autopilot, doing the same thing over and over.
It's the patterns of this world, man.
It's scary when I see that, and it makes me go like, are you a person? What are you? How can you be so? Because of course they say the ignorant are blissful or the ignorant. To be blind is to, in some ways, be a gift, because you don't have to look at the truth of things, even if, especially the harsh truth. And I see that and I go, how can you be saved? Because you won't. Someone could put something as beautiful as Jesus himself could show up and say, "Here I am," and as a believer, you would probably deny him. Like, what is that? How do you come to that conclusion? What causes you to be like that? And that's just a thing where I'm like, I feel hate for those people. Like, hate, because I know, there's nothing I can do to help them. There's nothing Jesus can do to help them. They know what the right thing is, and they still refuse to do it. They just stuck in these patterns of the world, and I don't see them try to get out of the patterns. They like being led like a lamb, but this time it's a lamb to slaughter. Like, they're not with the good shepherd, they're with the malicious shepherd, or the worldly shepherd, I should say.
Yeah. Well, they say that Satan has dominion over the world, and I could fully agree with that 100%. I think it's really hard, like you were talking about, like Jesus in the desert. The thing that always tripped me out about that verse, if you read it, I'm just going to read the very first part of it, though, but it says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted." That's crazy, because he was led by the Spirit, like the Spirit of God. He was led there and pretty much just left there. And if you skip down to the end, it says, "Then the devil left him, and the angels came to attend to him." They came afterwards, but he was in there. And a lot of times I feel like God's leading you to the desert, right? And it feels more like 40 years almost at this point, 27 years. And you're like, what's going on? And I felt like I was there for 40 years, because my whole life was kind of chaotic and a mess and just crazy. And it's just like one thing after another, from growing up in the ghetto, my mom an alcoholic, and growing up in the ghetto and these bad things happening, to just praying to get out of there. And then I finally get out of there, and it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. And it's just like, wow. And, too often we think that I don't even know if we think, or we just want things just to get better, to be perfect. But I think how God's growing you and what he's allowing is going to produce a whole different fruit than anybody else could ever understand. That it's going to be fruit of the Spirit. It's going to be fruit from God that is stronger, that's actually a harvest that's actually plentiful. And it's not just going to be like you were saying, these people who keep saying the thing but stuck in these patterns of the world. They keep doing these same things. As soon as they get in the dark, they just drop their armor and they drop their shield and swords, and they run real quick. And I feel like God's doing something different with you that's going to produce something that's different than anybody else has ever seen, because we're walking in. I feel like maybe you're led by the Spirit there, and that's where the growth happens, right? It's not like God's not with you. He's watching over you, and he could intervene if he wants at any time, but he's letting you grow, because there's things I feel like in my life I had to mature in for me to be able to accept what God had for me. Receive what God had for me. And I feel like you're maturing, and I feel like you're getting there. And a lot of times we take these baby steps, but our problem is we want to take these big leaps and bounds. And you're taking these baby steps, and just you even being here, you showing up to group, even though you feel like people just talk a lot and grow a lot. But that's where it all started. Honestly, before I started my ministry, I ended up in a men's group. Same one I have at my house. It's different men, and it was at a church. And the first 6 months, I didn't talk. I just listened. I didn't say one word. I got a lot of those people like you were saying, they just talk and talk. And half the time, I don't even know what they're talking about. It's a crazy thing. They keep talking, but I don't know if they know what they're talking about. There's not much point to it. They're just talking. And there's this one guy I could think of. I'm not going to mention his name just in case he's listening, because I'm still friends with him. But he'd do that all the time. He'd talk all this and that and talk about how he, like if he knew it all, but at the end of the day, he wasn't even implementing it in any of it in his own life. He's just talking it and talking it and talking it and talking it. And he's the one who actually struggles the most too. But he talked about it and he knew everything. And that's his problem. He always knew too much to actually receive anything. And they just talk and they talk. And sometimes I get this nervous talk, especially if I'm running the group. I'm like, all right, I got to keep this thing flowing. But I always try to put some meaning or substance into it. Try to ask God, what do you want me to say? What do people need to receive? And then I try to speak like that. But that Bible verse, Jesus going into the wilderness with Satan, he was led by the Spirit, which always tripped me out. It's like God led him, and then he didn't come back until the end after he was tested and tempted and all these things. But I think that's where we grow, is going through it, living in the darkness, having to grow up in the darkness, right? Because I felt the same way you feel. It's different circumstances, but I was with an alcoholic mom, which she drank a gallon of wine every single night.
Oof.
You talk about demonic, and you talk about anger, and you talk about sadness, and you talk about a whole different depth of living in the darkness. Then we could barely afford food. I mean, at one point, our maintenance guy of our apartments were buying us groceries every 2 weeks when he got paid. Plus, we were on food stamps. Plus, we still couldn't afford it. I remember I didn't like stealing. That's one thing I didn't like to do. I had a friend who grew up and he was a kleptomaniac. That's all he ever did. But what I do is I knew a lot of my other buddies like to steal. And I was like, well, if they like to steal, you go in there and get the bread. You can go in there and get the cheese. You go get the mayo and mustard. You get the meat. And then that's how we ate some nights. I'm not going to lie. That's how we ate. 'Cause it wasn't just me who was hungry. It was all of us that were hungry.
Yeah, it's
I kind of just coordinated it. And I hated that every day. Seeing people get shot. Seeing people get stabbed. My neighbor, they were playing Russian roulette with a gun, and he ended up shooting his best friend in the head with a gun, and he died, and they just put the bloody mattress outside. Every time I took out trash, just that bloody mattress was there for years and years and years. Every day I wanted to get out of there. It was living freaking hell. Then my mom was just an alcoholic, and nothing was getting better, and I was stuck, and I hated school, and I ditched all the time, and I barely graduated by the skin of my teeth, and life just sucked, man. I felt stuck. I felt not only stuck, I felt like I was drowning. Just felt like, what's the point of any of this? I don't care. And the thing is, I wish I would have cared more when I was younger, because I felt like I could have done different things, but I don't have the same mind now that I had back then. It's a lot weaker. Now I look at it, I'm like, wow, it is a lot stronger. I do understand that it's built, but then I found my purpose, which is the most important thing, because I'm just going to tell you right now, Roman, people could have the best job, the best wife, the best car, the best house, and they don't have any purpose at all in life. And I'm telling you, your purpose is coming. I can see it. I can feel it. And that's all God keeps telling me about you is watch. His purpose is coming. Like just even you being in the studio right now, your purpose is coming.
yeah. I'm still trying to figure out what that purpose is. Like I have all these ideas, but I try not to put too much weight in these ideas, just out of, try not to disappoint myself. Because me and disappointment, that's a volatile mix. Like that's my whole life has been disappointment, and it's been disappointment because of just people just promising things they're not able to deliver, or just forgetting about promises, or putting no weight in promises to begin with. And that's just how that word has just been. It means nothing in our time. Promise. I promise. Yeah. Same thing as love. People just throw the word love out just without actually thinking about what, oh, wait, this word is supposed to have a lot of weight to it. That's a very serious word. And we just throw it out like candy, left and right, just instead of actually showing it's just a word.
It's not an action or anything
Yeah,
behind
it's just
it.
a hollow word that we just throw out there. And it's like, it's just been devalued. And it's just like, man.
It's more like
But,
a lust too. It's when they say love you, it's more like of a something that's going to benefit them or satisfy
yeah,
them.
it's a selfish love. And it's
Yeah,
just,
agreed.
everything's so backwards in our society. I mean, you just look at it, just like, I can't help but when every time I get out, that's why I like nature so much, which sucks. I'm not able to get in nature that often. When I'm out, I'm just like, dude, why is our world so bad? You just see it everywhere, just from the way people act to how society's structured and the societal norms and even our infrastructure and the things we put value in as a culture. And the culture itself and just how degraded and just disgusting it is, just fake and hollow.
Hmm.
And it's just like I see fakeness and hollowness everywhere. Like there's nothing, very little that's genuine, very little that's real. And that's why I get mad when I hear people talk. Is because when you hear people, just the people who talk and talk and talk, I hear three things. It's A, they're talking because they like to hear themselves talk. They're talking because, but you can tell what they're saying isn't their own words. They're regurgitating something they heard online or from somebody else. It's like, I'm like, that's not your words, and you can tell. Like, have you ever seen when someone's talking and you can just tell like they have no clue what they're talking about, but yet they're talking about it anyway?
All the time.
And I'm like, why? Like, if you don't understand it, why are you talking about it? You're just muddling the meaning of what you're trying to convey, but you don't understand it yourself. And then there's those who are just don't know what to do but talk. They just talk because they're trying to release, they're trying to get over some trauma, or it's the only thing they know how to do is just talk. Just like a revved up a chainsaw, but and then you just let it go. And just keeps going. And I'm like, okay, like, can we all just sit down and listen, and then maybe we can all take these ideas and make a blueprint out of it. Maybe we could put a game plan and actually hold everyone accountable and to what that game plan is, and have everyone understand, okay, this is my role in this mission. There's not a lot of talk of missions anymore. And I'm not talking about like, missionaries like going out, but I mean like the missions because God put everyone on God's got a mission for everybody. But everyone thinks their mission is societal mission. Car, job, wife, status, fame, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not what he cares about. He wants you to have resources. That's true. He wants you to have a safe environment. I believe that. But like, does he want all this stuff like, 40 million followers on Instagram? God doesn't care about that. He never will care about that. And nobody should care about that because it's fake. Do you know those 40 million people? No. There's no possible way to know 40 million people. It's impossible.
You have a relationship with them?
Yeah, it's not possible. Like genuine relation. And that's why I get so, that's a struggle of mine, is like the loneliness of like, I'm always trying to get to know others, like actually invest in them and be like, I want to know you as a person. I don't want to just know the good things or the things that concern me. Like, I want to know it all. I want to see it. I want to see the ugly. I want to see the scars, because that's how I know you're real. No, anyone who doesn't have scars, spiritual scars, mental scars, you haven't lived life. I'm sorry. You've been sheltered your whole life, and you've lived. There's an old adage of, you ever heard of the unicorn in the cage, or the fenced-in unicorn?
Yeah.
You're like, that's what they are. They're the pristine, beautiful thing, but you're caged in. You have no freedom. You think you do. Your cage might be big, still a cage though. But if you try to get out, oh man, you're not gonna like what you see.
That's how I feel about a lot of things. Like, even in the ministry of helping people, I've honestly been seeing families transform lately. Like, straight up families transform. But the crazy thing is kind of like you're saying, like, I have about 20 certifications, maybe more at this point, right? And that's cool. But the truth of the matter is I've never used one of those certifications to actually help the people that I'm helping, right? So it seems like the biggest thing is finding people who've lived it, who have those scars, right? Because the truth of the matter is somebody who has that scar doesn't want to hear somebody who doesn't have that scar. And that's why I think that you have such a big purpose, and that's why God's going to start revealing that to you, because at the end of the day, you've been through this, you understand this, and the best person, the way I can explain it best is the best person to help an addict isn't somebody who's been an addict. Best person to help somebody who's broken is somebody who's been broken. The best person to help somebody who's, struggling with whatever it is, pornography, is somebody who's struggled with pornography and got through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're talking to me about your problem, and I've never been through that, you're not going to find any weight in the words that I have to say. You're just going to think that they're all just fake, and that, once again, somebody just talking about things that they don't even know what they're talking about, and they're just talking and talking, like you just mentioned. I feel like you asked me a couple weeks ago, well, why should I get this certification? I don't even feel like I'm qualified, whatever else. I'm like, because, bro, it's nothing to do with the certification. And it's about your experience because you are qualified. Look at the people in the Bible, right? Abraham cheated on his wife and slept with his servant lady. Moses killed a person. Noah got drunk and defiled by his kids. Jesus's grandma was a prostitute, so on and so forth. And you just keep looking at them. Tell me one person that was perfect, that was, as our society would say, would be perfect for the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was having a meeting with some guys in here last night, and they were gang members. They were drug dealers. They were freaking. One dude went and robbed all the stores around here, from Valero's to Chevrons to all these other things. He's been, in jail and prison multiple times. He stuck a gun in his mouth 3 or 4 times, and for some reason it jammed, and all these other things. Like, he went to go do this. I was like, dang, you guys are overqualified for the job. Like, you're more than qualified for what I'm looking for. And honestly, those are the type of people that I really look for. I don't look for the perfect person who shows up on Sunday with the perfect family, perfect kids. Who's he going to help? And that's what it seems like a lot of times. Like, you have all these, the churches, and most of these churches, not this church, but most churches want to save the saved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they want to save the saved. It's like, what does it, that doesn't even make sense. It's not who Jesus came down to help.
Yep.
And it's like, you have all these perfect people with these perfect places and things and smiles and kids and cars and boats and houses, but deep down inside, they're just empty. Why are they empty? Yeah, maybe they have everything in the world, but they don't really have any weight when it comes to saving the things that God cares about or doing the things that God cares about. They're good at doing things that they care about, doing things that are selfish and for them. But that's why I keep telling you, like, Roman, you may not see it yet, but I'm seeing something in you that maybe you don't see. And you're going to have this weight that you start speaking your words and people are going to listen because you've been there. You've done that. You understand it. And that's one of the biggest things that God wants to use. He's not looking for a perfect person. He's actually looking for the broken people to go help the broken people, the hurt people, the people who've been in the dark, to bring the people to the light. Because you know what? You've been in the dark for so long, Roman. You know your way around, and you know how to bring people to the light because you grew up in the dark. You've lived in the dark. You stayed in the dark. You feel comfortable in the dark, where some people can't even turn off their lights at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying, like, that is something unique that I was talking to this guy last night, and I forget his exact words, but his worst days ended up being his best day. The worst things that ever happened ended up being the best things that ever happened. The things that we think that are so bad end up being your gift. And a lot of times we think of gift as a little Christmas present, wrapped up, so perfect. Here you go, Roman. Go live the perfect life. But really, the gift from God a lot of times does not look like that. It looks like Job's, right? Because Job could have been thinking, God, I'm so perfect, I'm doing this. But God went and humbled him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he really needed. He really needed that so he could really lean on God and have that real relationship with God. Because to tell you the truth, this world is going to end at some time, and you're going to be not on this earth and world forever. And what's going to happen? That's what God cares about, your eternal life. Where do you go after this? It's not going to be in the dark. Guess what? It's to the light because you already know the direction. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but that's just how I feel. It's like, your experience is way stronger, and that's your gift, man. And it's so hard to see because when you're going through this crap, when you're going through the freaking darkness, when you're going through the freaking water and you're wading through it, it freaking hurts. It sucks. It's bad. But at someday, I'm telling you, Roman, you're going to be like, I get it. It's just going to click like that. Every day sucked, and all of a sudden one day I was like, whoa, I get it. I finally freaking get it. And that's when I was able to walk in my gift, which... Do I still have bad days? Yeah. Do I still struggle in some things? Yeah. Am I perfect? No.
See, for me, and that's something I've been dealing with, is like, I do feel like I feel like I do get it, but for some reason, even though I feel like I get it, there's this barrier in the way that prevents me from applying what I know, actually getting it out there, and just trying so hard to get that barrier out. And I try to, excuse me, figure out, okay, who's keeping this barrier here? Is it the world? Is it Satan? Or is it God? Who's keeping the barrier here? And part of me always feels like it's all three, which is weird to say. Because again, it's world. our system being broken.
Mm-hmm.
Me trying to just get to a place to where I can be semi-stable so that I can get out there and spread the word and, help the people. But then I go, well, I can barely help myself right now. So how can I help someone else if, I can't even help myself? Like, I don't want to, because I do believe, like, I don't want to immediately come across as a hypocrite, like, oh, I'm trying to help you and, like trying to give all this advice, but oh, look how I've applied it. You look at my life, it's like, yeah, I haven't really done a good job applying it. And they'll see that. I want to actually like have the example, not a perfect example, not at all, but at least a place to be like, hey, I can say that I'm stable, I'm trusting, and I want to help you do it too. Because again, like, you understand what I'm coming
Yeah,
from?
you get it, but it's hard for you to receive, and that's what I struggle with most of my time. I think that's where
Yeah.
the transition came to one day. I was like, oh wow, I get it. Because the thing is, God doesn't want you to be better. Where does your help come from? Your help comes from God. And He doesn't want to wait till you're perfect, Roman, for you to go help people. And that's where you're holding yourself back.
Yeah.
And He wants to use you today. He wants to use you right now. And the crazy thing is, the more you start helping other people, it doesn't matter what your life is. If you want to know the truth, man, I had a ministry and was helping people, and I was still smoking weed. And I was struggling. I was trying to help people get off drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But how was I, deep down in my heart, I knew I had to quit, right? But I also knew deep down in my heart, like I wanted to help people, but I was stuck, right? I knew what it was, but then I was stuck. So me being stuck is I felt like I couldn't do it because I was still smoking weed. How am I supposed to help somebody off drugs when I'm still smoking weed?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to help somebody when I'm still struggling? But the more I started to help people, guess what? The
Yeah.
more I wanted to quit, the more it started to flip, the more I started to be like, all right, something has to change. And that's all I'm saying with you is it's coming, man. It's chaotic. I say chaotic. You call it stuck. You call it whatever
I
you
guess
want.
the word I'm trying to use is I want to be in a place where I can be reliable. Like, I don't want to go out there and throw out a bunch of false promises that I'm not able to keep.
So this is the thing is I think it's like anything in life. Practice doesn't make you perfect. It makes you better, right? So
Mm-hmm.
being reliable, I'm just telling you right now, one day you're not just going to be wake up and say, oh, I'm reliable now. Do you know how that starts? Is it's by being a little bit reliable and reliable to somebody, reliable to yourself, reliable and having accountability with somebody else and doing it little by little by little. Then eventually, boom, the whole thing flips. And now you're in control. Now you're running it. Now you're doing everything. And you are going to be the most reliable person. But the thing is, Roman, God doesn't want you to wait. He doesn't need you to wait. He wants to use you how you are right now. And when you start walking in that, that's how you're going to get more reliable. That's how you're going to get more accountability. That's how you're going to get better at what you're doing. But we can't expect to play professional ball if we never play T-ball. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to go and just take this step, even when we don't feel like we're good enough, because we do. We keep doing it. We keep doing it, and then we get better. We get better. We get better. As of anything in life, and I felt the same way. There's a thing called, why is it? Why am I not thinking about it? Imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
That's feeling like you're not good enough. And that's from the enemy telling you, Roman, you got to get better before you go do that. How can you go help somebody when you can't even help yourself, Roman? How are you supposed to go help people when you can't help yourself? How are you supposed to go make changes in people's life when you can't make changes in your own life? How are you supposed to pull people out of the darkness when you're still in the darkness? How are you going to get somebody out of the mud when you're still stuck in the mud? But that's not what God says. God says, your help comes from me. I'm the one who's going to do it, not you, Roman. So if you're going to wait for you to do it this whole time, you're depending on the wrong person. Because that's like Jacob counting on Jacob to do it. Jacob didn't start the studio. Jacob hasn't been taking the first. Jacob took a step, but it's not him who's guiding my way. It's God who's guiding my way. And that's what you have to realize is, Roman, God has something big for you. God has a plan for you. And all he needs you to do is pick up your mat and walk. He needs you to take just one little step at a time. And it's going to seem like no progress. I'm not good enough. It seems like I'm broken. It seems like I can't help anybody. But that's not what God says. God says, I'm the one who's good enough. I'm the one who's going to fix them. When I said earlier, I've been helping transform families. Jacob hasn't been doing nothing. God has been doing it all. But the thing he's been doing it through is broken people. Like even I call it an interview last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't really an interview, but let's say it was an interview because I'm looking for more people to help, just like I told you. And why do you think I said go get certified? Why do you think I told you, Roman? Because you're going through it. You're broken. You're hurt. And guess what? It's going to take for somebody else to get help. Because you're going to talk to them. They're going to understand what you're saying. They're going to talk to a perfect Sunday suit person. They're not even going to listen. They're going to be like, huh, yeah, I'm not even hearing you. Just like that's what I did until I heard somebody else who struggled. And I was like, whoa, I'm listening. You got my attention. Do you have anything good to say? And then they did have something good to say. And that's the crazy thing. I'm going to go back and play this podcast later. The stuff you were saying earlier, bro, that's good, deep stuff. It isn't just like repeating the same thing over and over and over and just saying words to say words. Like your stuff actually makes sense. That's deep, man. That's something you have to recognize. And you have to give yourself credit for that too, because you're not like these other people. You're right. Thank God for that. I say, thank God for that. And you know what? You say you want to trade anybody's life for yours for a day or a week or a month. No, you don't.
Well, I say that. I say that in as a question to them where I'm like, hey, you want to trade? You want to trade? Because you want to come deal with what I have to deal with? And I know every time they're going to say no. Just to kind of say that as like a wake up call to them to be like, hey, what you got going on is not bad. Get over it. Get over yourself.
But
dude.
this is what I feel like too. If you did that for a day, I think you'd feel weird because you'd be like, why do I feel so weak?
Yeah.
Why am I so scared? Why am I so timid? Why am I so broken? To right now, you may think that maybe there's stuff wrong and maybe this or that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're strong. You're not timid. You're not scared of the dark, man. And most people are. I just have to say, bro, you're stronger than you think you are. You're more than you think you are. You're better than you think you are. And you wouldn't want to trade with them because they wouldn't be able to handle. They would not be able to handle what you go through in one day. But on the flip side of that, you would feel so weird and so like, why do I feel so weak? Why do I feel so scared? Why do I feel so timid? Because you don't realize how strong you actually are. But we're going to start wrapping this conversation up. I appreciate you coming in and being vulnerable, talking about these things, Roman, because, most people don't like to talk about their weaknesses or the things that they're struggling with, right?
Mm-hmm.
They only like to talk about the good things. We like to talk about our Sunday suits and our perfect things and how great we are and how good we are. And let's stroke our ego some more. But you're coming on and just being real. And I appreciate that because I think that's what more people need is to hear the realness, to hear like the truth. The truth will set you free. What will a lie do? And that's what most of us tell ourselves. I'm so good. I'm so much better. I'm so this and that. But that's just a lie.
The one thing I know I need to be careful with, especially with struggling with the hate part, is like when I do come out and like call people out on it, which that's scripture. Book of Matthew says we're supposed to do that. Rebuke all unchristian behavior and that Christians are doing in the eyes of the public so they can all stand in fear. That's paraphrasing, but is to try and not be persecutory about it. Because part of me really wants to go, y'all are doing wrong and y'all deserve punishment for it. And I know that's not right, but that's something I'm seriously working on.
But you recognize in your heart, and the first thing I think is to identify that. And like you say, you're working on it, right? Most people never even identify it or work on it in their whole life. And they'll just try to persecute you or try to do this or try to do that. And the truth of the matter is you're aware of it. And I think awareness could go a long way. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you check out more of our podcasts and more from Roman. He's working on some books.